What do we do when people slander our names? What do we do when people lie about us or even tell the truth about us but twist it in such a way that intent is insinuated or assumed? What do we do when people smear our names to others? What do we do when someone is just trying to destroy us? So, Andrew Tate, as I've mentioned his name before, so at the beginning ceremony of the Olympics, there was a mockery. They tried to play it off as, well, it was just a feast of whatever his name is. I don't even care. But no, if you look at the parallels, and you actually see that it was mocking the Last Supper, and it doesn't matter. The thing is, it actually doesn't matter. I mean, first of all, we already knew this was going to happen. Anyway, that's a subject for another time. Andrew Tate was basically railing Christians for not fighting it. Okay? And the funny thing is, in Scripture, we are told not to actually defend God. Not to maybe defend our faith, but only in such a way that we give people the reason why we believe. Which, for most people, it's, well, God did this for me, God did that for me, and that is valid, but I have my own opinions on that form of belief, and that's between me and God. Maybe I'll address it sometime, but right now it's not important. So anyway, so this all lines up with what I said at the beginning. What do we do when we're slandered? And this is both in our faith, in our occupation, in our personal lives, publicly, whatever. None of that matters. It doesn't matter what forum it is. What do we do when our names are slandered? Whenever the truth is told, but it's twisted to make it look like something it's not. Or we are lied about outright. And the answer really is, in a physical aspect, nothing. We don't defend our names. As Christians, we don't defend our names. We don't actually defend God. We express our faith. Our job as Christians is not to convince people to believe. Our job is to tell people what we believe, and maybe even why. And then it's the responsibility is then on them what to do with that information. But in our personal lives, we don't defend ourselves from accusations and slander, true or not. Because, slander isn't just lies. It's also truth that is specifically used to destroy us. But anyway, don't defend yourself. I mean, if somebody attacks you physically, the choice is up to you. But if they're attacking your name, the only thing you really should be doing is praying. And if the notion strikes you to do it, fast as well. The more you deny yourself, the closer you get to God. That's the point of fasting, It's not about seeing how long you can go. It's not about proving you're so holy by fasting. Fasting is not about being holy. Fasting is actually about getting closer to God by denying what you need, well, your basic needs as a human. Much like many of us do in our relationships with our spouses or our friends, sacrificing of ourselves, even denying our most basic needs to make sure they're taken care of. Well, God doesn't really need to be taken care of, but that's not the point of it. The more of yourself you deny, the closer you get to God, if, of course, that is what you're trying to do. So pray, if the notion strikes you, fast, and let God defend you. The question is, would you rather, and this shouldn't be the reason why you go to God whenever things like this are happening, but most people are fairly petty. So let's put it this way. Would you rather strike your enemy with a hammer, or would you rather fire rain down from heaven and consume everything that they hold dear? They call that scorched earth for a reason. But again, that shouldn't be your goal. But if you are getting closer to God, if what you do is, instead of attack those who attack you, but you go to God in prayer and fasting, or just prayer, some of us don't have the conviction to fast. If you go to God first, instead of defending yourself, go to God, get closer to Him and say, whatever I've done, forgive me. Whatever they've done, forgive them. Let me live your way. And God will do one of two things. Well, one of three things, actually. One, He may remove you from the situation altogether. Or He may turn their hearts. Soften their hearts so they actually become righteous, see the error of their ways, and turn around. Or, as often happens with people who have hardened hearts, see themselves as their own gods, He'll rain down fire from heaven. Either metaphorically or literally. That's up to Him. But He may rain fire down from heaven and consume all they hold dear. I have seen it happen. I've seen people go from perfectly healthy to dead from some disease or catastrophe in months. Because instead of repenting and going the right direction, they chose to see their way as being right. And the usual mindset is, well, this person did this that I didn't like. Or in some cases, this person hurt me, so I must hurt them, which is peak pettiness. And I've been that way before myself. Right now, my name is being slandered all over the place, not just by my soon-to-be ex-wife, but by people I have actually hurt in the past. And yes, I did hurt my wife. I'm not saying I didn't do anything wrong. But I repented. I turned away from what I did. But it didn't matter. I have people who hate me right now because my name is being slandered. People I've done nothing wrong to, and people I've even helped. And my inclination is to fix the problem. Devastate whoever needs to be devastated so they never mess with me again. but it's childish and stupid. How can I say that I love God if not only do I not include Him in my decisions for how I am vindicated, or at the very least defended, but if I take matters into my own hands and exchange blows, tit for tat, eye for an eye, as it's stated. When Moses gave the people the law, he added some of his own. He actually did. So, for instance, divorce. Originally, divorce was forbidden, but because God knew that people weren't going to honor that, and Moses knew that people weren't going to honor that, there was a provision, except by, infidelity. Infidelity is the only legitimate reason for divorce according to Scripture. Okay, but another one he added is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, which basically means when somebody does something to you, you can do it back to them, only equal, not greater. Of course, later on, Jesus comes and he basically states exactly what I just said. It's like, this is not what God wanted. God allowed these things because He loved the people and knew that they weren't going to be able to behold these standards. Also, He loved Moses, so He honored what he said, even though it was contrary to what God wanted. But Jesus said, "You've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But bless those who curse you." He says to do good to those who harm you. Jesus wasn't some hippie walking around saying peace and love and just be good to each other. It wasn't about that. It was about you remaining holy and letting God fight your battles. If someone has done you wrong, God is the one that's supposed to be fighting that battle. You're supposed to be honoring God as a Christian. I mean, if you're not a Christian, that's fine. I've had people get mad at me for preaching on this platform. It's fine, get mad. The thing that doesn't make any sense is if you don't believe it, why worry about it? Move on. Speaking of moving on, your primary goal should be to honor God, to please Him with the works of your hands, and to preach the gospel. That's your job as Christians. If you're not a Christian, that's obviously not your job. So, if you're not a Christian, this doesn't really apply to you. But on that particular subject, if you're not a Christian, just because you're not, doesn't mean that there aren't solid morals in biblical Scripture. If you actually read what God really wants from people, I'm not talking about, Levitical law and all that stuff, and don't eat this kind of food and don't wear this kind of clothes. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how Jesus summed up all the law in 2 laws. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your strength. Okay? Which, if you're not a Christian, whatever. And the other one is love your neighbor as yourself, which I guess for some people is a problem. Some people don't love themselves. I still find it hard to love myself. And yes, it's for the very reason that you would think if you've if you've watched my earlier videos, all my confessions, horrible things I've done. Yeah, I have trouble loving myself because of the things that I've done. That person that did those things doesn't exist anymore. But this is the body that was used to do those things. So yeah. Something else that was written. I want to say Jesus said this also, but it's not just in Jesus' teachings, but it's also in Proverbs and a few other places. Sorry if I can't remember things right off. It's just like history. I've always had trouble remembering certain details. I can tell you what Scripture says, but I couldn't tell you for the life of me most of the time who said it or where it came from. Or, chapter, verse, book. But anyway, esteem others higher than yourselves. That means don't see yourself as being as important as they are to you. Look at others as being more important to yourself than you are. That doesn't mean, totally neglect yourself just to make somebody, mildly pleased. No, that means look at them as being so important that you want their life to be saved, that you want their soul to be saved. I mean, there's a lot of Scripture that actually has good, solid morals. All the things that people keep saying are wrong with the world, the solutions are actually in the Bible. They really are. Even if you just want to look at it as a simple book instead of inspired by God. If you just want to look at it as a simple book, the truth of the matter is the morals in that book are still solid. You can do no wrong by following them. Just make sure you understand them. Because there's a lot that could be misunderstood and abused. There's a lot of harm done in the name of Christ because of misunderstanding of Scripture and misuse of Scripture by narcissistic, ambitious people. So the takeaway from this, and it's almost 20 minutes, I better wrap it up. The takeaway from this is love others, do right by them, and let God fight your battles. Because if you do it, you will make it worse, and then God will come down on you. Trust God to know what He's doing. He's been doing it a lot longer than you. And I'm sorry. Fire and brimstone is far more powerful than a hammer. But your reasons for doing things should always be to please God, not for revenge or any form of pettiness like that. Everybody have a good night, and all that you do, try to be better.